for Texas A&M to take down Missouri on Saturday. Nickel Jaydon Hill has to have a good game.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this Friday, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk a little bit about some players that need to play well in this game for Texas A&M to take down Missouri. And we've talked about your Marcel Reeds. Obviously, yeah, Marcel Reeds got to play well for you to win this game. But a player that I think's got to show up for you to take down the Tigers of Missouri, one of the best teams in college football right now, is Jaydon Hill. You know, last week gets burned for a score, and we're all going, oh, no. But he then kind of finds a way to make some plays. His PFF grade on pass rush was like 96. It was incredible. He was really good there. Coach Elko talked about it, saying kind of like, well, I mean, he rushed twice and no one blocked him either time. Fair. But still, take pauses where you can get them. And it's a similar situation that we had last season. And not completely similar because the secondary is better, but it's still a little scary. I'd say last year was, 9 out of 10 scary. We're talking like a 3 out of 10 scary, and then maybe 4, to where it's like, okay, we can't have the secondary kill us here. And that's kind of how you feel. But Jaydon Hill is a guy, you need to show up. He's a guy that's played SEC football before. He knows what he's doing in this conference. He needs to play well in this football game. You cannot let Brady Cook against all of these elite wide receivers, Brady Cook with all these elite wide receivers have open players all day long. It just can't happen. If that happens, you're in a really, really tough spot to win this football game. If Brady Cook's able to find Weiss and Luther Burden all game long, wherever he wants them, because, Hill, nickel, and the rest of these safeties and corners aren't able to guard their guy. And so he's a player that if he doesn't have a good game and he gets burned, I think it's going to be tough to win this football game. Because, Texas A&M, you still haven't, let's call a spade here. The offense against real competition hasn't been incredible. Once again, let's pull up these exact numbers here. Against Notre Dame, Florida, and Arkansas. Now, Florida was a great game. You put up 33 points on the road. You take that all day long. 13 against Notre Dame, and then 21 against Arkansas. And the point here is the offense hasn't been incredibly world-beating except for that game against Florida. And there were still things against Florida that you would like to have had go a different way. So, point is the defense has to help out here. That's bringing up the offense. That's the reason we're talking about Jaydon Hill is the defense needs to help out the offense here as much as humanly possible. It'd be great if this was the game where the offense proved, hey, we can put up 35 points against a great team. Is that likely? No. Is it possible? Sure. You need a little help from your defense, maybe some good field position, some turnover setting you up in the red zone, whatever. But still, definitely a possibility. So Jaydon Hill is a guy. I have a feeling if he does not have a great game, it's going to be problematic for the Aggies. So Jaydon Hill is my number one guy, the Florida transfer. He's got to play well in this big-time game for the Aggies. The next guy I have here is Noah Thomas. And I've talked about it this week. You want him to stack solid performances. Last week, what did we see Noah Thomas do? He goes 6 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown against Arkansas. Has a great game. One of the better games of his career. Now, listen to the stats on the year. Notre Dame, 1 catch, 10 yards. McNeese, 3 catches, 28 yards, a touchdown. Florida, 1 catch, 2 yards. Bowling Green, 5 catches, 38 yards. None of those are numbers that you're expecting from Noah Thomas this year. Numbers you're expecting are something like 6 for 109 in the touchdown, or or 4 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. You're expecting him to be a really good player in this offense, and he was against Arkansas in one of the most important games of the season at this point. Now, you need to see him stack solid performances. That means play well against a really good Missouri football team. If he could put up a similar performance to the one that we saw against Arkansas in this game against Missouri, it's going to go a long, long way to helping the Aggies get this monumental, pivotal win. So, it's definitely a game, definitely a part of this game that's been important because we know that Coach Klein is going to want to run the rock. We've talked about that this week as well. But when they decide to throw it, somebody's got to be open downfield. And last week, that was Noah Thomas, and I believe Noah Thomas could be that guy going forward as well. So you need him to continue to play well. I think when he's at his best, this offense is at its best. So would love to see Noah Thomas stack good performances. Kind of piggybacking on that offensive conversation, my next guy here is Le'Veon Moss. I think Le'Veon Moss is probably one of the most significant keys to a victory for the Aggies because, once again, the Aggies want to run the rock. Texas A&M wants to run the football. So if you want to run the football, your running backs need to make good plays. We're getting ready to talk about offensive line. Obviously, that plays a role in it too. But Le'Veon Moss he's been really, really good when you've needed them to be really, really good. Last week, he had 13 carries for 117 yards. Against Florida, he had 18 carries for 110 yards. Against Bowling Green, 16 for 90, 9 for 84 against McNeese. I mean, he's been really good to this point in the season. He's going to get to 1,000 yards. He's at 6.2 yards per tote right now. You take that all day long. But yeah, once again, no question. I think he gets to 1,000 yards as long as he's healthy. And so you'd love to see, knowing how much they're going to run the football, you'd love to see Le'Veon Moss have 100-plus yards in the ground and a touchdown in this game. Now, I've talked about this a little bit earlier in the week. Against Arkansas, he only had 13 carries. Yes, against Florida, he had 18. Against Bowling Green, 16. I'd love for him to have 18 carries in this football game. I mean, look what he did. He had 9 yards per carry last week against Arkansas. Against Florida, with 18 carries, he had 6.1 yards per carry, and he's making big plays happen. Along 30 yards against Arkansas, along at 27 against Florida, along of 12 against Notre Dame, which isn't as crazy long, but 31 against McNeese, 15 against Bowling Green. He's making big plays happen. He's making chunk plays happen. Give him a few more touches. I'd love to see him at that 18 yards per carry mark, and also knowing on top of that Amari Daniels, especially last week, was not very efficient with his carries. I mean, last week he had 9 carries for 14 yards. And then you go, well, the whole running back room wasn't able to get it going. That's not true because, once again, we had Le'Veon Moss going for about 9 at tote. So it was an Amari Daniels issue last week, and I think that you got to give a handful. And I'm not saying give every one of those 9 carries to Le'Veon Moss because he needs a couple, breathers, especially if he busts a long run. I mean, there's a lot going on there, but I would definitely give some of those 9 back to Le'Veon Moss and give Amari Daniels like 4 or 5 carries and give those extra 4 or 5 to Le'Veon Moss because I just think he's the better running back. And no disrespect to Amari Daniels. I think he's a great player. I think he's a good running back. I think Le'Veon Moss is better. I think Le'Veon Moss is really, really good. We've got a few more players to talk about that need to play well in this game. Offensive line, some of your defensive linemen, and maybe some special teams. We're going to talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Ladies and gentlemen, me and my buddies last night, obviously I'm out of town, but we always go to the same sports bar and bet on the first touchdown score for Thursday Night Football. I say that pretty much every time about FanDuel. And we ended up going with Drake London. Who scored the first touchdown? Boom, Drake London. The boys were feeling it. Where did we do that? Of course, on FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel is, of course, the official partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. So we've got a few more conversations on the show today. We're talking a little bit about the recruiting class, where that's at, where I think that's going to finish up. We're talking a little bit about, I want to ask a question about grading the coaching staff, which will lead to a show next week during the bye week. We're not going to get deep into that today, but I'm going to lay out the groundwork so I can hear y'all's thoughts. But the next player I have here, and this isn't a player, it's players, and it's 5 of them, is the offensive line. You know, this is now going to be the most important game that Marcel Reed's played in. Florida game, obviously on the road, is tough. Now you're playing the number 9 team in college football. And I believe that Marcel Reed is going to be fine. I think he's going to settle in. I think he's going to play really good. I've talked about that all week long. But at the same time, I also think that you got to protect him in the pocket. You do not want him to be running for his life all game long. And yeah, Missouri's got some solid defensive linemen, some solid guys who are able to get pressure. And they've got 8 sacks on the year. But they're able to get some pressure. And you need to be ready for that. If you're this offensive line, if Marcel Reed has no time in the pocket, I definitely think that's going to be a serious problem in this football game. And a topic that we have not discussed enough, I think the media in general hasn't discussed enough, is how good of a job this offensive line's done. Have they been perfect? No. But one of our most significant offseason conversations here on Locked On Aggies, as you everydayers know, was this. If the offensive line can just be good, not asking for great, not asking for elite, not asking for 5 future Hall of Famers, just good, this Texas A&M offense can be really, really good. And this offensive line has done their job. And I stand by that. I've been very impressed with how this offensive line has played this season. They've done exactly what has been asked of them. And I think they've played better than I expected them to. I'll be honest with you. And I expect him to do the same in this football game. So the key there is to protect Marcel Reed in this game. Young quarterback, ranked opponent. I mean, this will be, well, I guess, Oklahoma State, but still, one of his first ranked game. I mean, this is a challenging spot for a player, Marcel Reed, who has not played a lot of football yet. So make sure that he has time in the pocket and that he is feeling good back there in the pocket, because if he's being pressured all game long, it's going to be a problem for him. So give him time in the pocket, the whole offensive line. Give him time. I believe in Marcel Reed to be able to deliver the throws he needs to when he has time. Obviously, there's been some accuracy issues. We've talked about that this week. Want to see that cleaned up. I think this is the game that maybe he will clean it up, because I think the stage is so big, it's going to kind of force him to. But if this is the week where he dials it all in and he finds a way to start being a little bit more accurate in hitting receivers downfield, your offensive line's got to help him out. And I think they're going to do that. So offensive line, the next guy, no surprise here, it's Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. Has Nick Scorton had the season that you would have imagined him to have to this point? I want to hear y'all's thoughts on that. I would say he's the thing about this is he's been really good, but he hasn't been exactly what I thought he'd be. But what I thought he would be, let me rephrase this better. He's been really, really good. I thought it was going to be really, really, really good. So nothing wrong, and he still has the opportunity to get there. But I want to hear y'all's thoughts now. I'm really curious, like how good has he been in your all's opinion? He's got 14 tackles on the season. He's got 3 sacks. I believe he can get to double-digit sacks. I mean, he's created pressure all season long. He's been a really solid player, but I still think that game where he is truly, I mean, once again, he was against Arkansas. He had 2 sacks. That was his, but I think he can. So that was his here I am game. When I talked about it, he was due for that, but I still think he's got one better than that in him. I think he's got another 2-3 sack game in him. And if it could come against Missouri, that would be so huge for this football team that's trying to take down a top 10 team at home. So would love to see. And yeah, I'm hard on Nick Scorton because I think he's awesome. I think he's going to be a great player in the NFL. I think he needs to keep going. I think he can play even better than he has. He's been playing really good. So I'm hard on him because he's a damn good player. And I think he can really, really outperform what he's done so far. And so far he's been good. So I'm hoping that this week, maybe does he get 2 sacks again? Can he repeat? That'd be awesome. And it'd be huge for his case to get to double-digit sacks. No question there. The last players here need to play well is your kicker, Tyler White, or your punter, Tyler White, and your kicker, Randy Bond. Little things, and I talked about it on yesterday's show when discussing keys to victory. I don't really want to see Randy Bond out there much. Well, I do actually. That's not true. I want to see him out there kicking extra points. I do not want to see him out there kicking field goals. But if he's called upon to go kick a field goal, you want him to split the uprights. Matters in this game. Those are the little things. You cannot have missed kicks. It will really, really hurt you in a game like this. So he has got to find a way to split the uprights. I believe he's going to be able to do that because I believe in Randy Bond. And then we talked about how much of a weapon your punter, Tyler White, was, in this game the other day. And I mean, like, let's run back through those numbers again. I mean, he had, of all of his kicks, I want to give you the exact numbers here. He had 9 total punts. 7 of them were inside the 20, along at 58. That stuff matters. Field position, and once again, in a ranked game like this, field position is going to matter. You have got to find a way to win the field position battle. And I think that having a kicker like Tyler White helps you do that. And I think he's going to do that this week. So really excited to see what he is going to be able to do in this game. You want to be able to pin these guys back all game long, and having a punter to help you do that is very, very important. We're going to talk a little bit about the recruiting class and a little bit about what we would grade the coaching stuff. I'm not sure if I'm going to give my grades yet. I want to have a conversation about what I'm asking for, and then that'll be a show for next week after the bye week, during the bye week, excuse me. So we'll have those 2 conversations coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But I want to say about our friends over at Game Time. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the only place that I am ever going to buy tickets to anything that I am buying a ticket to, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a concert, whether it's you're going to see a comedian or you're going to see a Broadway show, whatever it is, the only place you should ever purchase tickets to said events is on Game Time. My favorite feature of the Game Time app is being able to see the venue. Okay, here's my seat. Here's what the stage looks like. Here's what the field looks like. Here's what the rink looks like. Here's what the ice looks like, whatever. The court. I like being able to see that from the app. So you know exactly where you're sitting when you purchase your tickets. That is my favorite feature. Every time I buy tickets, I've bought basketball tickets, I've bought baseball tickets, and I bought concert tickets. Every time I pick the seat I like, see what it looks like from the stage, and then boom, it's exactly like that when you get to what you're going to. It's awesome. I love the Game Time app. I recommend it to everybody who's ever buying tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So the recruiting class, it's once again, I want to completely reiterate that I am in no way, shape, or form complaining right now, but you haven't got to commit in a while. And so I feel like we've slowed on the recruiting conversation. Your class, according to 24/7 Sports, currently sits 9th overall. You've got 21 commits. Feel great about where this class is top to bottom. You've got your quarterback, Unisson Longstreet. And I think that what you're really looking for now, and the one thing that surprises me a little bit, is knowing you have your running back and DeAndre Ryden, and you have some tight ends, and you have a lot of skill position players in this class. I would love to see some more receivers come join Hassan Longstreet. And the only reason this a little bit surprises me is often you see when you land a quarterback early in the class, especially a guy like Hassan Longstreet, who is literally a 5-star, he's ranked 28th in the class. When you see a player like that commit, you often see a lot of elite receivers follow. And yeah, you've got a couple good receivers, but none of those super highly ranked, highly touted guys that I would have expected at this point. So, I'm kind of expecting that to change at some point. And once again, I mean, I'm definitely happy with who you've got in this class when it comes to receiver. I mean, you got a guy in Kelshawn Johnson who's really good. He's top 200 guy, a guy that can play both ways. He's talented, but I think that you could still see a top 150 receiver commit to play with us on long street, because you see this a lot. Receivers want to play with elite quarterbacks. We see really good receivers. Reminds me of Cam Coleman. You always know how we always, which is why I can't wait for our crossover with Zach Blackerby at Locked On Auburn. He always makes fun of me about Cam Coleman. Those of you that every day are here, I'm talking about, well, how good of a season has he had with those awful, horrible quarterbacks thrown to him? That's why that stuff matters. Cam Coleman's a great example of that. He could have been playing at Texas A&M right now with some solid quarterback play, but instead, he's at Auburn with the worst quarterbacks in the history of the world. And that's kind of the point. Really good receivers want to play with really good quarterbacks. So I think that you could still see a really good receiver end up in this class. The only other thing I'm still asking for in this class is a few more guys in the trenches on both sides of the football. I think that would help this class out a lot as well. So the last thing I want to talk about just for a second here, and we're not going to dive deep into this conversation, but I do plan to have this conversation next week. So what would we grade Coach Elko, Coach Klein, and this Texas, and pretty much all of this Texas A&M coaching staff, as we, at this point, it'll be literally be the midway point, because we'll be 6 games in. Yeah. At the midway point of the season, what do we grade the coaching staff? So once again, I'm not going to give grades now. I'm talking about for after this game against Missouri. And I do believe that the outcome of the game against Missouri will change grades. I think if you blow out Missouri and win this game at home, or beat Missouri, I don't even think it has to be a blowout. You beat Missouri at home and you're 5-1 heading into your bye week, feeling really good. College football playoff hopes are still alive. I mean, a lot of excitement and a lot of excitement still there for the rest of the season. I think that grade is high. But then if you go and you kind of get embarrassed by Missouri, I still think you got to be overall happy when it comes to recruiting and everything that is part of coaching. You'll be happy with what Coach Elko's done, but I also still believe that there is a world where, his grade would drop just a little bit if he doesn't find a way to take down Missouri on Saturday. So that'll be a bye week conversation we have next week here in Locked On Aggies. That'll be a fun one to talk about kind of where we're at. A lot of those kind of mid-season type of, we'll do some players of the year and stuff like. We'll do a lot of bye week conversations next week, and then obviously we'll break down what happened against Missouri. So that is going to do it for this week here at Locked On Aggies. Really appreciate y'all being here all week. I know we've had weird upload times and stuff, me being out of town, so appreciate y'all bearing with me on that. We'll be back home, and everything will be back to normal on Monday morning. So really appreciate y'all sticking through with all this craziness this week. Everybody enjoy the football game. I'm fired up about it. I can't wait to hopefully see Texas A&M get a huge win, and we will break it down next week right here on Locked On Aggies. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we will see y'all next time.